Cool.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. On today's episode, we have a very special guest, Tim Gardner. Tim, how you doing, sir?
Doing pretty well. Thanks.
Yeah, awesome. Tim, for those of us that don't know anything about you or what you do, can you please share a little bit about yourself and how you help people?
Yeah, I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I work with a lot of different professions and business owners to help them build their practices. I work mainly in the mental health world to help business owners who are just starting out to build a solid foundation, structure their business in a way that's going to be long lasting, and give them the tools that they need and work with them in a way that helps them feel comfortable so that they can continue to be a good practice owner.
Yeah, wow, that's awesome. So when you do business consulting, um, Tim, what does that look like? Like, what specifically do you consult about?
I really will. It depends on the business, but a lot of times I look at what's going well in the business and how can we make those things better without reinventing the wheel. And then I look at pain points, things that need to be immediately resolved. And if I can usually work on those two areas, we can build a plan or a foundation to help the business owner recognize these are some simple things that we can do to make things feel better for you. A lot of times when people reach out to me, it's because they either just don't have the time to manage some of the smaller, more intricate pieces of the business, or they have tried over and over to get things to a different place and have failed at that. And they just really want to do business. They want to do therapy. They want to manage the things, but they don't know how to fully encompass um, the whole business strategy. So when I go in, I just try to figure out what pain points that I can help alleviate for them, and then figure out how to make those other good points that are already going really well better for them.
Oh, wow. I love that. So many threads to pull on there. But before I begin with asking specifically how you do those things, I like to start with, how do you know that you're a good fit for a particular business owner and that they are a good fit for you?
Good question. Because I'm not a good fit for everybody by any means. Whether it's price point, whether it's my skill set, whether it's their needs versus my expectations, or my time versus their needs, I look at just what I can try to do, and I definitely am the first to say I'm not a good fit, or I can't take this on, or I don't have the bandwidth for this. Or, yes, absolutely, this is something I'm confident in. I would never lead someone down a path that says, yeah, I can do that when I really cannot do it at all.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, Tim. Thanks for sharing that. So let's say a business owner reaches out and they're kind of at their wits' end about a certain element of their business. What does kind of like the first session look like, or if you do a consultation call, what does that look like?
Yeah. I try to send out a few questions first. So electronically is typically how I'm going to reach out to somebody, whether it's through LinkedIn or Facebook, or email, get an email correspondence. And so at that point, I'll send out a few questions of like, tell me what your business is first. I'd like to know where the website is so I can go check it out and get just a generalist view of what your business is, how many staff you have, what your client load is looking like. So I'm doing a little bit of research on my own first, and then I'm asking questions of just those things that I just said initially, with what are the pain points, what are the areas that you really need help with right now, what are the areas that you have focused on that have done really well, maybe that might need a little bit of tweaking. Once I get that kind of initial gathering information, then the first meeting is always a free consultation, just kind of brain dumping, helping me understand where their business is right now, what it looks like, one of the things I've realized from the very beginning is even though we're all therapists, we all look at therapy very differently. And there are a lot of different kinds of businesses out there. There's things that make therapy businesses really successful, and I think those can be implemented across the board. Um, Meaning, like if you have structure, if you have an intake coordinator, if you have an intake coordinator who's a little bit more sales minded, those are going to be really successful tools for you. But there are some also nuances that can come into individual businesses. And so I just want to really learn what your business is like. And I never want to assume this is where you need help with. The other area that I do is I use some of my therapy tools to bring into that area and say, not jumping to that conclusion of I can work with you and I know exactly what you're saying. I want to listen to you. I really want to understand what's going on with you. And so give me the information. I'll ask questions, I'll prompt you, but I really want to understand everything that has to do about your business so that I don't jump to the conclusion of this business is just like this business over here, because we're all different. We're all different people. We have different focuses. So that's what it initially looks like, is just kind of gathering a lot of really good information. And then at the end, figuring out if we're a good fit, and usually offering some kind of tentative fluid plan that says, this is where I would think we would go with this. These are some things that I can offer for your business. And then for the business owner to say, yeah, let's think about that. Or, yeah, that's exactly what we need. Let's move forward with that.
Yeah, Tim, as you were saying that, something was just standing out to me, and that is, going back to the training that you and I went through, right? As MFTs, we're taught that the problem typically isn't the problem when a client shows up, right? And as you were talking about the business owner doing their consultation call with you, and they're sharing certain things, we can't really assume that what they're presenting is the problem, right? It's like, we just kind of have to keep an open mind and be curious about what other things may be lurking behind the scenes that we may not be that may not be visible to the business owner. And then it sounds like you really have a nuanced and structured approach to helping those business owners. Does that sound about right?
Yeah. And if I can even go a little bit further into that, when, to your point, when I speak to another therapist, I'm speaking to this person who is so inherently invested in their product, in their business, in succeeding, have already probably invested thousands of dollars into this, thousands of hours into this, energy, time, neglecting other things, sacrificing other areas. So if they're reaching out for help, I'm not just there to give them a product and say, here, go work on this. I'm really there to understand how I can do that. And initially, we're all communicators, right? And we all have emotions. We're all usually a little bit overly emotional sometimes as therapists. And I want to make sure that we stay on track too, but I also want to listen to them because this is a personal connection for them. These businesses sometimes have their names in it, sometimes have their legacy in it, or the way that they feed their families. The thing that they took that leap off the ledge of leaving a different group practice to start their own practice. So usually it's such a huge investment for them. I want to make sure that I'm not missing anything and that I can be a really good help for them. But yes, the structured approach that I have lends to obviously guiding what having them guide me on what they want to work on, but ultimately also just saying, let's get this task done, let's move forward, and this is how I can help you with that.
Yeah, I really appreciate that, Tim, because you're right. The business is a very intimate, almost like partner level, like relationship, entity. And you can't just barge in there, kick down the door and be like, hey, this sucks, that sucks, we need to improve that, take this away. You know what I mean? Like, because that can get very dicey very quickly. And just like therapy, I think, we can't do that with clients either, because it's not appropriate and it's not fair to them, and it can actually cause a lot more damage. And so, or cause damage. Yeah, I really appreciate what you're saying, that, you're recognizing that this is a really important aspect of your client's life, the business owner's life. And with that being said, we treat it with the respect it deserves. Right. And so
Mhm.
that's what I think I'm hearing. Yeah, that's really awesome. So let's say they partner with you. They seem to be a good fit. You're a good fit. You do the consultation call. What does maybe like the first session look like? If there is, like, you know how in therapy we do like a 2 hour assessment, typically maybe like a 90-minute or a 2 hour assessment. Do you do something similar when it comes to businesses?
Yeah, absolutely. I try to slow down the process for the business owner because a lot of times they just want me to come in, do work, and get it fixed. And I like to understand the full breadth of the company, where who is your intake coordinator? How do you get clients? When you get clients, how do they get to the therapist? What do therapists do? How much do therapists get paid? Where are your areas that work really, really well with your agency? How does the flow happen? How does information get disseminated? Those are more deep questions that I ask, and I do have to be a little bit careful. Again, this is a really personal place for the therapist or for the business owner. I don't want to get to a place ever where I'm saying anything that's, you know, accusatory or rude or misleading by any means. I want to really just understand the full picture. And I don't want to jump into a place where I'm offering any kind of advice or support that's not needed at that point. For instance, if that's a low priority for somebody, I want to leave that out. I want to only work on the higher priorities of things. I also want to figure out what they've done. Sometimes I'll offer a suggestion. I'll hear business owners say, like, yeah, we've tried XYZ before and it didn't work for us. I don't want to get to that place. I just want to hear, what have you tried? And then how can we pick up from where you've tried, where you've left off? Do I need to go back and retry those things for you? Or do I need to maybe educate you in how those areas actually work? Or do we really just need to pick up where you left off and move on from there? Versus ever assuming that, like, I know more than the other person, especially depending on who the business owner is. This could be their last shot, right? This could be their last moment where they're just reaching out before they close the doors. I want to maximize my capacity and ability to help them. So that next step typically is really just seeing kind of the network of the business and getting kind of figuring out where I fit in. I look at myself a little bit as a chameleon in that way of, how can I step into your business as a supportive role, right? I'm not like on top of anything. I'm not, as far as organizational structure goes. I'm literally just right here with you in the trenches of where do I go next? And that helps me see a bigger picture, the broader picture of the business, so that I can kind of figure out where I need to go.
Nice. Yeah, that sounds really awesome, Tim. And as you're saying that, I'm just thinking about all the nuance that you bring into your work, right? Like, you're bringing in care, you're bringing in focus, you're bringing in strategy, you're bringing in efficiency, right? You want to be effective, and that means sometimes ignoring some of those, like, smaller things, the ankle biter, so to speak, and you're focusing on like the gator closest to the boat. And I think that's really powerful. I like to ask about progress. So let's say you're doing the work with your client. What does progress look like?
Hmm. I mean, really, if we go a little bit back to the therapy world, I think just goal setting and meeting goals for them, or realizing that whatever their focus is actually getting focused on. For instance, if it's I want to work on some kind of organizational structure. I need an employee handbook. Getting that employee handbook done and finished and submitted to the employees or the team that they have. Whether that's me implementing it or me handing it over to the clinical director or office manager, whoever it is that disseminates that information. Whether it's that or how I need an admin staff, and I need to have them trained and ready to see the clients that we have. Great. Yeah, let's figure out how to get the kind of admin staff. What admin staff what are you looking for? Are you looking for somebody full-time, part-time? So progress for me is meeting their goals. Whatever that goal is, whether it's a finite, I need a handbook, or I have this process that I need to go through as far as like hiring, onboarding, training a new employee to help run the front end of my business. So just meeting their goals.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think it's really cool that you are there to accomplish whatever goal they may have, whether it's like one singular thing, like, hey, I just need help with this one thing, like onboarding these people or whatever the case may be, to something larger, like something more long term. So it's really cool to hear that you have the capability to help on a like wide range of things. So that's great. Tim, I wanted to ask about wrapping things up with the client. So like, let's say a client engages your services, they contact you for help and they do the things and you guys partner up. How do you know when it's time to end? Like, do you accomplish the goals and then you leave, or do you kind of offer maybe after everything's done, like, hey, also, by the way, I noticed these things as well. If you may consider checking these out, maybe do you offer suggestions? What does that look like?
Yeah. To be fair, or to be frank, I should say, I don't want it to end. I want to always be in that client's Rolodex, for them to reach out to me whenever they need to. And I think it kind of depends on the beginning side of things. So if I step in just purely on a consultant basis, um, meaning I need help, you can help me. Tim, come into my business, help me with this task. Then when the task is complete, then it's done. However, throughout that process, as I mentioned earlier, I'm looking at all of the nuances of the business. My mind is probably over analytical sometimes. And so I'm looking at anything and everything that's going on in the business. And I've seen a lot of really good, successful businesses. I've seen a lot of businesses that have not been successful, and I know why they haven't been successful. And so, if I can translate that over into the business that I'm in right now and just offer any kind of nuances or any kind of help or advice or suggestions, then I'm going to do that. I'm always going to be able to say, are you okay if I offer this little bit or give you a little bit of push or nudge right here? Always in a way that is acceptable for them. I would never want to push something on someone that they're not asking me for. So initially, yeah, if I'm just kind of there for a one-off thing, when that task is done, it's done. I move on. Please contact me in the future. I'd love to help you. However, what I prefer doing is more of like what I call fractional services, where I'm there on a monthly basis with you, whether I'm a fractional COO, fractional clinical director, office manager, human resource director. I want to be there for your team whenever you need me, whatever that looks like. 5 hours a month, 5 hours a week. I want to be a part of that structure. I think that lends to the most success that I can help for your business, as opposed to these little one-off things that I can do. I'm always there for those one-off things, happy to offer those, but I think the place where I felt like was needed in our field is, for instance, I've been a COO before, chief operating officer. Most agencies can't afford a COO full time 40 hours a week. You've got to be big. You've got to be 50 plus employee or 50 plus therapists, full time therapists who are, raking in the dough for you in order to have that hierarchy structure in your business. So why not hire somebody fractionally, just a couple hours a week, to come in and help with those organizational structures, with the clinical director side of things, with office managing, overseeing your biller, your intake coordinator, helping them to train them, to buoy them up. In those instances, where I see my exit being is when either they've outgrown me, meaning they can hire somebody a little bit more full time. They can bring that a little bit more in house, which honestly I think would be preferable for the business, and that's something I could offer if it ever worked out for me. I found the right place to call home a little bit, set down some roots. However, if that's where I start seeing my exit, to be able to say things have done here, I'll joke around and say I'm not really Mary Poppins, right? I'm not some magical creature, but when the wind changes, when things start looking a lot better for this agency, I've met goals that they've asked me to meet, or I've made my I've given them all that I can. I'm not some super knowledgeable person that knows everything about a business, knows everything about the clinical side of things. I can just offer what I can. And when I've reached that capacity, then I can also say, maybe it's time for me to go and you guys to find somebody else who might be able to pick up where I've left off.
Yeah, Tim, I actually really like that approach and that idea of like a fractional hire, so to speak, because I think it offers a lot of benefits. And the first one that comes to mind is just maneuverability. Right? I was in the service, so that's a term we use. Being able to maneuver
It's a big
is
word,
something like,
Rich.
hey, you show up and like, hey, like they could be like, hey, Tim, this week this came up. Like, can you like what are your thoughts on this? Can you handle this? And then the following week could be a whole different topic that came up. Maybe there was a specific billing issue that is kind of like a big fire that needs to get handled, and then you could potentially lean into that the following week. And then the week after that, it's like, hey, we need to hire somebody. Like, what are your thoughts on acquiring talent? And so, because what I do know about running a business is that things come up all the time, right? So like having somebody that is kind of like a support that shows up consistently, whether it's a call or in person, or via virtually, that to provide guidance and help. I think that's really cool. And also it allows the business owner to, for lack of a better word, kind of punt things off. It's like, I need to delegate this. I don't have the time. I got my kids. I got my family. I'm dealing with this issue over here. I'm onboarding these clients. I can't really deal with it. There's like this priority, right? Like we got to prioritize certain tasks. And if they have somebody like you who's knowledgeable, experienced, and not and savvy enough to get these things done, then it is a great option to be able to delegate some of these things over to that person. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and that's where it gets that's where it becomes my wheelhouse and my strength, is to be able to sit in that place where I can kind of be maybe a CEO's right hand man, or a clinical director's confidant, or somebody that can provide the services that you need in that moment. You're absolutely right, Rich. There are things that pop up. They're never ending in a business. And, I was on a meeting actually earlier this morning with a clinic, and we had gone over this no-show policy, late cancellation policy, probably 5 times, said separate points over the past couple of months. And there is still one thing that I didn't understand about the electronic health record and how to no-show a client in their electronic health record, that I've never taught one of their employees before. And I actually felt amiss behind it, that didn't know that that's what you're supposed to do. I thought there were 4 or 5 steps. You do those 4 or 5 steps. It happens. It does what it needs to do. I've been with this agency for, I don't know, 6 months now. And the clinic owner was on the call with us, showed us this one little thing. And I was like, oh my goodness, I can't believe I didn't know that. And those are even things that there's no way that I'm ever going to learn everything about the business right up front, especially with an employee. When they first get trained, there's never anything they're going to be able to know. There's no way they're going to know all of the things that they have to do to fix every little issue. Those things pop up from time to time, and we call them like OJT, the on the job training. You just, when it pops up, you learn about that one little specific nuance in the business, and then you move on. So yeah, I like to be able to show my worth early on enough to where people say like, oh, this guy wants, we could have him stick around for a little bit. And even though I don't know everything, I can learn things as well. So there's been times that not been times, the only way that I've learned the things that I've learned is by researching them, or making mistakes and fixing those mistakes. I've grown to this ability to provide these services for business owners because I was in a place that needed that help. It's not like I went to some special therapy business school, right, where I learned all the things about how to run a business. Even if I had an MBA, sometimes it doesn't translate over right into the therapy world. Therapy businesses, mental health agencies are extremely nuanced. They're very different than other businesses. How we pay our employees, how we compensate them through benefits, how they work, right? Who says that they just get paid if they see somebody? Like where else does that happen? Typically, there's a salary. Typically, you get hourly pay. Like why do we do it this way? And so it's very different than your normal corporate structure. So that's the area that I've been able to do, is translate those skills from the business side into the therapy mindset. And that's what I try to do, is be able to show my worth that way so that I can help business owners. And then if I can't help them at that moment with maybe the quick fix, then I can go learn how to do it and help them learn how to do it themselves as well.
Tim, thank you for sharing that. I wonder if there are some areas of expertise that you're particularly capable of helping businesses with.
So before I ever became a therapist, I started billing. So I was providing mental health billing services and medical billing services. Uh, that kind of came from this skill set where I just kind of get bored with doing certain tasks, especially medial tasks. So I was working at a hospital, and the my manager at the time came to our team. I was doing registration in the emergency room, and she said, "Does anybody know anything about insurance verification?" And I said, "Yeah, I totally do." I had no idea about insurance verification, none whatsoever. I definitely lied. But I did not want to do ER registration that day. And so she brought me back into this room. The person who did insurance verification was sick, and she was having to do this all on her own. We sat at two separate desks. I literally listened to her on phone calls as I was mimicking how to do those phone calls, and just asked the same questions that she asked. So I got into insurance verification that way, figured out how billing works and how there's CPT codes and diagnosis codes and add-on codes and all these things, modifiers, and kind of weaseled my way into a marriage and family therapist's office one day through some connections that I had, and did billing. So that grew over time into me learning how to do medical billing, mental health billing. I'm still not perfect at it, and it's ever changing. So I'm already a dinosaur. Every month it changes. So billing for me though is a area that I understand really well, enough to be able to help set up a structure for that. So that's one area that I do really well. I also spent another lifetime working as a waiter, like a server at a restaurant, and a front desk clerk at several hotels. I worked for three different hotels. So the front end business and the front end face of a company means a lot to me. And the sales aspect of customer service and hospitality means a lot to me. And I think those skills are really easily translatable over into a mental health world or a mental health agency. So I love working with intake staff to help them understand what a client is looking for when they're calling in. What are questions that you need to ask them? How can you sell a therapist to somebody? Some of the therapists that are harder to fill are going to be interns and men. And I've developed patterns of speech and narratives and scripts on how to sell not only a male therapist but also an intern to clients, so that we can still fill their schedules. A lot of business owners kind of shy away from filling intern or having interns on staff with them, specifically because they're like, how are we going to be able to fill their schedule? How am I going to meet their needs? Same with males. We're not the dominant role in the therapy world, for a reason. I think a lot of times their or clients want to go to females, their our female counterparts, and they want to get therapy from people that they feel closest to, whether that's a female or a person of color or somebody in the LGBTQ plus community. They don't a lot of times align with men because men don't go to therapy as much as women go to therapy. And even when men do go to therapy, they want a softer touch. They don't typically want the bald, bearded, gruff looking type person. They want somebody who's a little more soft spoken and can walk them through some process. So that intake world, I really love to be able to help the practice owners. And then kind of the third area really is just that structure organizational piece. I am extremely into puzzles. As you can see behind me, all of these are puzzles. I love figuring out where are puzzle pieces, what's missing, how can we make this look really a pretty neat type package so that information gets disseminated naturally. It flows to the therapist as it needs to. It goes back and forth from the therapist to the hierarchy. It goes from billing to intake to therapist, all that kind of stuff. I love working out those nuances in a business. So those are kind of the three areas: billing, and then intake, coordination, and then organization.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Tim. And I really appreciate the comment you made about the customer service because it is so true. And in fact, I'm doing a pretty extensive marketing course, and they talk about that. How every interaction that our staff has with the client or potential client is part of our marketing. Because every interaction means something to the client as far as their narrative and their experience about working with the company, and I think that is something that is overlooked, generally speaking, not out of malice or anything, but it's just like it's not a thing that we're paying attention to because it's like, oh, front desk has got it, like let's worry about the clinical side when they're in the office, right? But we're not really thinking beyond that. It's like, what are we doing when we answer the phone and we're greeting new potential clients? How do we refer them? Are we doing it with grace and encouragement, and all the things? And so I really appreciate that you're incorporating some of your early customer service skills gained through fast food. By the way, I think best industry to learn customer service real quick, and into your practice, because it really does impact, I think, in the long run, the bottom line. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree. And I love that you shared that about marketing. Every interaction you have, every interaction the client has with your company is going to make or break your relationship with them. And whether that's I reached out to my therapist and sent him a text and they didn't respond within an hour. Um, I reached out to your front desk person and I went to voicemail and I felt like my voice wasn't heard. I reached out to your office and I never got a call back from anybody. All of those can do a myriad of things, and I look at every client as, sometimes this is hard to explain, but I look at one client as being multiple clients. If I can keep that one client, they hopefully will refer me to more clients. If I lose that one client, not only could I potentially lose what that client could have also brought to the business, but now I've also made it to where that client could refer other people away from my business, or maybe leave a bad Google review. Or when someone says, "Hey, do you want to go to Acme in, therapy down the street?" And that client says, "Yeah, I've been there. I never really felt really super comfortable there. I don't think you should go there." Versus, "Guys, you need to go see Rich at this one therapy clinic. He's amazing. He's such a great therapist. I love him. He's helped my kids. He's done super well with us. And if you guys ever need a therapist, he's the one to go to." So yeah, even just not calling someone back, even sending a text message that's super short and maybe not super warm and inviting. You can't please everybody by any means. We learned that in hospitality by um, leaps and bounds. And you can't just throw money at people just to make them happy either. So, you do have to hold firm boundaries. We've got to get paid. We have to have late cancel, no show fees, that kind of stuff. But you can listen and you can be there. One of the clinics that I work with, they have a full intake staff. They're really great. And the owner actually gets all phone calls and all text messages to his cell phone. They use an app, And so he gets every notification. So he doesn't read all of them per se, but if he finds something that kind of sparks his little red flag banner that goes off, he'll reach out to that client specifically and just take over the conversation. He'll take the intake coordinator out of it. Not that the intake coordinator's done anything wrong, but he will work with that client personally so that they feel heard, they feel seen. That means a lot. They don't know how big this business is. They don't know if it has 20 employees or 2 employees. They just know that the owner of a company just reached out to me to help me feel better and feel more comfortable about my situation.
Yeah. Yeah. And solve the
Yeah.
problem, whatever the problem may be. Yeah. Please go ahead. Sorry.
No, you're good. That really gives a different sense. Now, I'm not saying every owner needs to reach out to every single client, right? You can have clinical directors, you can have office managers, you can have clinic supervisors reach out to your employees. You can even have the intake coordinator if they're really well trained and doing really well with their job. But that means something different when someone like that does it. And so that's the side, like you were just mentioning with marketing, that will keep clients coming back. Marketing is not just about putting an ad on Google review or having your SEO work the way that it needs to, or having a really pretty website. It is the personal touch. We live in a very personal world. We live in a very humanistic touch world as far as therapy goes. And in moments where you feel like you can give that extra little twitch to somebody to make them feel comfortable and needed and seen there, then that can do way more than a Google ad will ever do for you.
Yeah, yeah, I appreciate that, Tim, and definitely a lot of. I mean, that's a whole rabbit hole we can go down in a whole different podcast episode if we wanted to.
Right.
But I wanted to ask Tim if somebody is liking what you're presenting, they're interested in maybe doing a fractional hire or even a longer term relationship with you. How can they reach out?
Yeah. So the easiest way to reach out to me is email. So it's just Tim at mindinmo.com, MIND, the letter N, MO.com. The business I own is called Mind in Motion. It was developed to kind of this idea that as long as we keep our mind going, then life can get really good for us. So that's the easiest way. I'm also on Instagram at mindinmocoo. And I'm also on Facebook. Mind in Motion is my professional page. And then you can find my personal page, just Tim Gardner. Those are the best ways to reach out to me.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Tim, and we'll make sure to plug all those into the show notes. Yeah, I appreciate that, and thanks for coming on the show. This was really insightful, and maybe we could do it again in the future. How does that sound, sir?
Yeah, I love it. Thank you, Rich. I appreciate it. Good luck with everything you do, and hope this is helpful for your viewers and in any way that it can be.
Yes, thanks, Tim. I appreciate that. All right, everybody, thanks for signing in. Until the next one, bye.